The Buccaneers are finally looking healthy while the Lions have a laundry list of players that are going to miss on Sunday. That and more on today's episode of Locked On Bucs.
You are Locked On Buccaneers, your daily Tampa Bay Buccaneers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, and welcome into this live edition of Locked On Bucs, your daily podcast covering the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We want to thank you for making Locked On Bucs your first listener view every single day. Don't forget you can subscribe or follow for free on YouTube, where a lot of you are watching this live right now, or wherever you get your favorite podcast. And of course, you can follow on Twitter. I am James Yarcho at JYarcho_Bucs. He is David Harrison at DHarrison82. We are your hosts of Locked On Bucs, credentialed members of the media covering your Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I am the deputy editor of SB Nation's BucsNation.com. David is a staff writer over at BucsGameDay.com, Sports Illustrated's fan nation site covering the Buccaneers. And we are here with you every Monday through Friday, along with our everydayers. And as always, we want to share our appreciation for your continued support of the show. This episode is brought to you by PrizePicks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to PrizePicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code LockedOnNFL, all lowercase, for a first deposit match up to $100.
Good evening. Happy Friday. And let's go to our live chatters. On this episode, the Buccaneers are looking for some standout performances to get a win against the Detroit Lions, and game predictions are coming up a little bit later. But first, let's talk about health, because everybody knows you could have the best roster in the National Football League, but if it can't stay healthy and you can't keep your stars healthy, it doesn't really matter. For the Buccaneers, there are plenty of players on the injury reports to come to the end of the week, but the only player that's still technically in question is Shaquille Barrett, who has been battling an illness, which, you know, as injuries go and game designations go, illness is probably the most likely to be overcome, right? Outside of that, Kalijah Kancey, Servassier Dennis, Mike Evans, Jamel Dean, Luke Gedeke, Ryan Neal, Anthony Nelson, and Devin White, all G to G, good to go. James, how important is that for the Bucs this week against the NFL's fourth highest scoring team in Detroit?
It's vital. It is 100% vital. And look, I know everybody's excited that Mike Evans is good to go after missing the second half of that Saints game, but look at all the other injuries that you just mentioned with Kalijah and Servassier and Jamel and Ryan Neal and Devin White. You know, all these guys are on the defensive side of the ball, and they're all big impact guys. So getting these players back against the likes of Jared Goff and David Montgomery and Amon-Ra St. Brown and rookie standout Sam Laporta, like, these are huge. You needed these guys to be healthy, and that's why we were actually kind of talking about how good the bye week was, being week 5. I know early on we talked about how bad it was that the bye week was so early, but now it has opened this door of opportunity for the Buccaneers to have all these players in this game, to bring in Kalijah Kancey and do what he did early on against the Minnesota Vikings, to finally be able to really unleash Servassier Dennis as a new wrinkle of Todd Bowles' defense, to be able to get after the quarterback in his versatility and his speed and creativity on the defensive side of the ball. So hopefully the biggest one that I'm looking at with the kind of, let's see how this goes, is Jamel Dean. And that's only because he struggled in the early part of the season and then had to deal with the injury. So when Jamel Dean comes back, I want to see the old Jamel Dean. I want to see that guy that's making plays and breaking up passes and creating takeaways. Otherwise, might as well switch over to Zion McCollum, because he was getting the job done in both Jamel and Carlton's absences. But essentially a full slate of as healthy as this team has been since that week 1 game against the Minnesota Vikings. But David, on the Lions side, they are going to be without quite a few players on Sunday. Rookie sensation Brian Branch is going to be out for the second week in a row. Joining him is fellow rookie Jahmyr Gibbs, guard Jonah Jackson, running back Zonovan Knight, tight end James Mitchell, cornerback Emmanuel Mosley, and defensive lineman Josh Pascal. Questionable players are cornerback Khalil Dorsey and that rookie tight end sensation Sam Laporta that I just mentioned. Amon-Ra St. Brown is a full go. He will be it. So, David, which one of these players is the biggest loss for the Lions? And how much bigger will it be if Sam Laporta ends up missing this game or maybe even leaving this game early with that calf injury that we've seen hamper guys like Joe Burrow and Kalijah Kancey this season?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest guy that's out right now for this game has got to be Brian Branch. I think, Jahmyr Gibbs is obviously the biggest name. I think the most probably, household name recognition. But, if you have Jahmyr Gibbs on your fantasy roster, which I do, he's not getting a whole lot of burn anyway with the Detroit Lions offense because David Montgomery is just like suddenly just one of the best running backs in the National Football League, which I'm super happy for David Montgomery. I'm just not happy for David Harrison in his fantasy squad. I just talked about myself in third person, so that's fun. But Brian Branch, then every bit is advertised, right? We talked about this during the draft lead up because we were rallying for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers to potentially consider Brian Branch as a draft pick. I was also rallying for the Washington Commanders to potentially consider Brian Branch for a draft pick. So I did a whole lot of work on Brian Branch, and he's kind of what the NFL has turned to in young DBs these days, where he's a hybrid safety linebacker. But he's not a hybrid safety linebacker in the way where he's more of a safety and he can kind of tackle, or he's more of a linebacker and he can kind of run. No, he can do all of it. He can tackle really well. He can guard your tight end. He can guard your running back out of the backfield, and he can play deep coverage if you really need him to and become a ball hawk. Like Brian Branch is one of these guys that's what we're kind of touting him to be coming into the NFL draft. It's what he's proven to be, even though he wasn't as high of a draft pick, I think, as a lot of people really anticipated. But then you have to look at Sam Laporta and what he's been able to do with this Lions offense and what he's been able to do with Jared Goff as a rookie. And not to pat us on the back a little too much here, but James, we did kind of talk a little bit during the draft process that after the top two, Dalton Kincaid and Michael Myers, like Sam Laporta looked like the most NFL ready type of tight end out of the remaining top five or so in this draft class. And Sam Laporta has proven us both correct. Actually, he's proven us more correct because Michael Myers, I don't even know honestly what the hell he's doing. Halloween's coming up. Maybe he'll do something around them. But Sam Laporta obviously is huge here. Brian Branch, I think, that was the biggest guy out for this competition.
Yeah, well, unfortunately for Michael Mayer, he's stuck in Vegas and they stink. But yeah, I'm with you 100%. Brian Branch he's been that dude all year long for the Detroit Lions, so that is a massive loss. But yeah, again, if Sam Laporta, if that calf injury flares up, that changes the entire complexion of the Detroit offense. Yes, you still have Amon-Ra St. Brown, but Jameson Williams hasn't really shown a whole lot. Josh Reynolds is kind of up and down and all over the place. So the driving force of the Lions offense throughout the season has been a combination of Sam Laporta and David Montgomery with his resurgence after leaving the Chicago Bears. So if Laporta leaves, that's really going to help out what the Buccaneers defense can do in terms of, all right, now you really just have to key in on these two guys and make sure that you're doubling Amon-Ra and you got Levante and Devin White focused on David Montgomery, and let the chips fall where they may. Take your chances with Williams and Josh Reynolds. Meanwhile, go ahead and get after Jared Goff, because without Laporta being that safety blanket, may hold on to the ball just a little bit longer than normal and allow that defense to really get after him. David, I do want to jump into the chat real quick. I saw a comment that I want to mention. Richard said that the Bucs will be the Lions' toughest opponent so far. One of my good friends is a diehard Detroit Lions fan, and he said the exact same thing to me just the other day, that he feels that this matchup, even though they faced the Chiefs in week 1, this matchup is going to be the toughest ones that the Lions have faced all year. But which players for the Buccaneers are going to make this matchup difficult, and they have to bring their A game on Sunday to get that upset win over the Detroit Lions? That is next on today's episode of Locked On Bucs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Everyone should be empowered to care for themselves and their loved ones during the unexpected. That's why Jace Medical offers the Jace case. The Jace case provides 5 life-saving antibiotics for emergency use and gives you peace of mind so that you are not just hoping that you have access to medication in an emergency. Jace Medical makes sure that you have medication in hand, like this, in this cute little case that you can see. Jace Medical is super simple. They handle everything from the online evaluation to licensed pharmacy medication delivery and ongoing consultation and care. Do not get caught unprepared. You can save more than $360 by getting these life-saving antibiotics with Jace Medical, plus an additional $20 off by using code LOCKEDON at checkout on jacemedical.com. That's JASE medical.com. Promo code Locked On.
Thanks again for making Locked On Bucs your first listen or your first view today and every day. Every day, thanks again for coming through on a consistent basis like you do. Football season is here, and Locked On is kicking up our coverage with Locked On NFL Kickoff Live. Every Friday, Locked On is going live at 2 p.m. Eastern on every Locked On NFL channel, and your hosts are going to break down every game on the NFL schedule and get you ready for your team's matchup, your fantasy lineups, and your betting angles. Plus, you're going to get in-depth local analysis from our stable of NFL hosts across the country who know these teams better than anyone else. Find Locked On NFL Kickoff Live every Friday at 2 p.m. Eastern on any Locked On NFL YouTube channel. So continuing on with today's episode, we're going to take a look at both sides of the football, and we're going to talk about who needs to show up and show out on Sunday to lead the Tampa Bay Buccaneers to a win. James, I'm going to kick it back over to you. Which player needs to be on their A game this Sunday?
This may be the low-hanging fruit, but I think it's the most obvious answer. On the offensive side of the ball, it's Baker Mayfield. The Detroit Lions are allowing 224.4 passing yards per game. That's only 17th in the NFL. And for those of you that want some quick math, that's the bottom half. For reference, the Buccaneers are allowing the 16th most. So they're in the top half, but not by much. They're also allowing 21.4 points per game, which is 15th in the NFL. The Lions defense, 7 takeaways this season. 5 of those are interceptions, and 3 of those interceptions are by cornerback Jerry Jacobs. They also have 14 sacks on the season. The offense for the Lions has allowed only 7. In the Lions defense, I couldn't believe this. They are only blitzing 18.2% of the time. The Buccaneers have 12 sacks on the season, and they blitz 38.8% of the time. So Baker Mayfield has to make these quick reads and get the ball out of his hand. We're talking Tom Brady quick in order to avoid the Lions' natural pass rush to get to him. And he's made some great escapes this season, and those are fun to watch and they're fun to talk about on the live post-game reaction episodes. But you can't rely on that all the time. And not all of those escape acts and those jaw-dropping moments are going to turn into positive plays. At some point, Baker Mayfield is going to escape a sack and end up throwing an interception, or try to escape a sack and fumble the ball. It's not always going to be sunshine and roses when Baker Mayfield is forced to do that. So he needs to be the most decisive, efficient, and accurate that we have seen all year long against a Lions defense that can bring the pressure with just their front four, drop all these other guys in coverage, and create takeaway opportunities. And they can do that even without Brian Branch on the field.
Yep, that's true. Daytona Dad said that we look supple in the live chat. I don't really know what to make of that. It's kind of distracting.
I'm not sure either, but also Daytona Dad, I saw your comment earlier about your OCD kicking in, and it confused me too.
Would this be better? Because now the names stay, but the faces move. I don't know which one would bother people more.
Probably the names.
Basically, look, James is on that side when he has Evan on. So I'm like, you know what? Let's just keep it consistent. Just keep James on that side. Anyway, that's literally all the thought process that went into that was. So Baker Mayfield, absolutely everything you said, totally paying attention. Yes, I agree with everything you said. I'm just joking. He needs to have a great game against his defense because the defense is certainly capable even without Brian Branch. On the other side of things, Devin White. Devin White has to have an A game here against this team. And not just for the Buccaneers to get a win, but for him to get a win. You know, look, Devin is saying a lot of great things and a lot of good things, and I don't discount those things. I don't want to get anything twisted here. But at the end of the day, it's not what he says to the press. It's not what he says to the media or on Twitter or on Instagram that's going to get him paid. It's his play on the field. And we all know that throughout his history so far in the NFL, there have been some deficiencies, specifically against guarding tight ends, guarding running backs, getting washed out of plays because he's over aggressive or just making the wrong read, right? The Detroit Lions come into this game in 11 personnel 56% of the time. That means there's a tight end and a running back in the formation 56% of the time. But there is a tight end in some sort of formation, whether it's 11, 12, 21, 22 personnel, 96% of the time, the Detroit Lions are coming out with a tight end in their offensive formation and most likely a running back. So for a linebacker now, you got to read the play, you got to read the direction, but you also have to read your assignments, whether it's tight end, running back. It could be a combination of both, depending on what they decide to do. If the tight end stays in, you got the running back. If the running back stays in, you got the tight end. Everything is part of communication. They also use motion 53% of the time, which challenges your defensive players' IQ, their understanding, their communication. Not a lot of play action, which is good because Devin White does tend to bite on play action. But again, if you watch the film of Devin White in this Tampa Bay Buccaneers defense, you know Devin White likes to bite on play action. So you might see an increased use of that play action from the Detroit Lions. They also like to use short drops and screen plays 57% of the time. What do short drop passes and screen plays do to super aggressive linebackers? It makes them mad, ladies and gentlemen. What does Devin White do when he gets mad? Sometimes he over pursues. Tight end Sam Laporta has run the 14th most routes by any running back or tight end in the National Football League so far this season. That is a lot of routes run by a rookie tight end. This team is going to look to get Sam Laporta on Devin White because Lavonte David is about as consistent as they come. And if Jared Goff sees Laporta getting matched up on Devin White, I promise you he's going to test it. Jahmyr Gibbs, even though he's injured, 25th among running backs and tight ends. We talk a lot about his usage, but he's actually 25th in running backs and tight ends in routes run in the NFL so far. Even with Gibbs out last week, David Montgomery was 8th in week 5 alone among running backs and tight ends and routes run. So just because Jahmyr Gibbs is not in this game, they're not going to change their strategy. And even if Sam Laporta is out, they're not going to change their strategy. They're going to put their tight ends out there and their running backs to challenge these linebackers in pass defense. David Montgomery also on the ground, tied for second in carries between the tackles, leads the NFL in yards between the tackles, second in broken tackles, leads the league in missed tackles forced, and has only been stuffed 10 times on 83 carries between the tackles, which is 12th most in the NFL, which sounds like a lot until you remember second or the most carries inside the tackle. So most carries inside the tackles, 12th most stuffed. That means he's not getting stuffed very often. Lavonte David's going to have to help us as well, but Devin White is going to have a very good game because if David Montgomery is getting yards against this Buccaneers defensive front because he doesn't get stuffed very often, Devin's going to want to help out. If he can't get to Jared Goff on his blitzes because of screens and short drop passes, he's going to get super aggressive. If he does those two things, he's going to become vulnerable to the play action, to the wheel route, to the screen passes, to all those things. We've seen it before. This is a game where Devin White can show the Buccaneers, you need to pay me.
Yeah, there's no doubt. And it can't be one of those disappearing acts that he's had this year. It needs to be more along the lines of what we saw out of him against the Minnesota Vikings, where he was all over the field. He wasn't getting beat. He wasn't giving up those big plays. And you mentioned, bringing him on blitzes and everything. Todd Bowles is going to bring pressure from all over the place, and he disguises it really, really well. He's going to bring Antoine. He's going to bring Lavonte. He's going to bring Devin and Ryan Neal. He'll bring Christian Izzy in off the edge. He's going to be using a lot of different players, but the other thing to remember is how good Jared Goff has been under pressure. So those short dropbacks, those quick screen passes, that's why he has such great numbers and has been so efficient under pressure, is because he's getting the ball out of his hands quickly. If Devin White is disciplined, taking those options away, it's going to create second and long, third and long situations for this Buccaneers defense to be able to get off the field. But Jared Goff, for as much as we have criticized him and teased him at moments throughout basically the history of the show, he has been absolutely phenomenal under pressure. Now, all 3 of his interceptions this year have come under pressure, but outside of those 3 mistakes, really, he's his numbers are absolutely fantastic. So you're 100% right. Devin White has to be on top of things. He has to be disciplined. He can't get sucked in. Otherwise, things are going to open up for Jared Goff, Amon-Ra, Laporta, Montgomery, all of those weapons, and the Lions are going to be putting up a lot of points. But prediction time is coming up. So start dropping your bold predictions, your player of the game predictions, and your score predictions in the chat. That is coming up next here on Locked On Bucs. PrizePicks is the largest independently owned daily fantasy sports platform in North America. They are the easiest and most exciting way to play DFS, and it's not just you against the number. It is just you against the numbers. It's not you battling thousands of other players, including pros and sharks. You just pick more than or less than on a 2 to 6 player stat projection and watch those winnings roll in. PrizePicks is really simple to play. I can make my picks and submit my entry in less than 60 seconds. Quick withdrawals, easy gameplay, and an enormous selection of players and stat types are what makes PrizePicks the #1 daily fantasy sports app. And now they offer Apple Pay for quick and easy deposits into your account this football season. This week, I'm going with Mike Evans to have more than 60.5 receiving yards, Zach Wilson to have less than 195.5 passing yards, and Travis Etienne to have more than 0.5 total touchdowns. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code LockedOnNFL, all lowercase, for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL, use code LockedOnNFL, all lowercase, for a first deposit match up to $100. PrizePicks, daily fantasy sports made easy. Wrapping things up here on a live edition of Locked On Bucs, and the Buccaneers play the Lions this Sunday at 4:25 in the resurrected Big Sombrero. Catch every snap of the Buccaneers' hometown broadcast with SiriusXM on the SiriusXM app. Just search Buccaneers, and while you're there, you just might hear a familiar voice during the game. But yes, it is that time. We are going to get to your predictions in the chat. But David, let's have you start things off with your bold prediction. What you got?
We got some Lions fans in the live chat. That's what we got. I like the energy. I like the competition. I dig it. I like it. You're not Lions fans in the live chat. You're not gonna like my bold prediction. I got the Tampa Bay Buccaneers defense picking off Jared Goff twice. It would be Jared Goff's first 2 interception game of the year. And the Lions fans, if you still stuck around, if you didn't turn it off after that, you're going to think, you know what? Jared Goff doesn't really throw a lot of 2 interception games. You're not actually doing any research. You're just going off reputation. And you would be right, except for the fact that Jared Goff has 2 interception games since joining the Detroit Lions. Both of them have come in October of those respective seasons. Both of them have come on the road.
Ooh.
Both of them have also come in the October 20s. So that's where my bold prediction kind of falls short. Detroit does play Baltimore on the road this October 22nd. So in reality, that's where this trend would probably bite Jared Goff in the butt. But you know what? Let's just make it happen this weekend. Let's forget the 20s. Let's just make it happen this weekend. And the Buccaneers give Jared Goff his first 2 interception game of the year in October, like he likes to get it. And you know what, Lions fans, it's probably his only one, because that's been the trend since he got to Detroit. Actually, Jared Goff very impressively not turning the ball over, at least through the air, since getting to Detroit. So the Rams are probably unhappy about that.
Yeah, probably. That is a pretty bold prediction. I don't know if I could see Goff throwing 2 picks, but this has been an incredibly opportunistic Buccaneers defense. They are tied with the San Francisco 49ers in turnover differential this season. That means they're taking the ball away and they're protecting the football. So all you need is a bounce to go your way, and all of a sudden you're flipping the field, you're stealing a possession. My bold prediction is that David Montgomery is going to be held to under 70 total yards. This is a guy that is coming off back-to-back 100-plus yard performances. He has 6 touchdowns in 4 games, including a hat trick in Lambeau. David Montgomery has been fantastic, But you know who else is fantastic? The dynamic duo of Devin White and Levante David. And as you laid out in segment 2, it is going to be on Devin White to really be a big part of why David Montgomery is going to be contained, or a big part of trying to contain David Montgomery is how I should have phrased that. But if you are able to contain Montgomery in the running game and really shut that down and turn this into a one-dimensional offense, that's where Todd Bowles is at his best. That's where he brings all these different pressures, all these disguised pressures, and creates chaos, forcing situations where the opposing quarterback turns the ball over, which could play directly into your bold prediction. So the key is shut down Montgomery, turn this into a one-dimensional team, and do what you do and be opportunistic. My predictive player of the game is Kalijah Kancey. That doesn't mean he's going to have like 4 sacks or anything crazy, but the impact of having Kalijah Kancey return in this game, what he brings, and I've said it over and over and over, with his speed, his size, his agility, his strength, his quickness, it adds a wrinkle that the Lions have not prepared for because they couldn't prepare for it. David, you and I were talking the other day. Kalijah Kancey was on the field for 9 pass rushing snaps against the Minnesota Vikings. In those 9 snaps, he had 2 pressures, 1 quarterback hit, 1 hurry. That is not a ton of film to go off of. So with the addition of Kalijah Kancey and by default, the addition of Servassier Dennis, the Lions are going to have some things thrown at them this weekend that they did not see in their film study, that they did not prepare for. And that does lend a little bit of an advantage to the Buccaneers defense. So Kalijah Kancey staying healthy, staying on the field, being an impact guy will go a long way if the Buccaneers are going to win this one.
Yeah, absolutely. So our everydayers know that I like to get a little bit creative with my player of the game sometimes, and sometimes I'm predicting a lot of stats, and sometimes I'm just predicting the dude that I like to have a good game. I want Zion McCollum to get his first career interception. That's my player of the game. If Goff is going to get picked off twice, I want Zion McCollum to get his first interception. I don't even care how it comes. It could be a tip. It could be Jared Goff getting sacked and it's almost like a strip sack, but his arm's going forward, so it's called an interception. I don't care how he gets it. I just want Zion McCollum to get his first interception of the game. So that's why he's my player of the game. Prediction time. So first of all, shout out to the Lions fans who stuck around in the chat and are making it very interesting. I'm trying to read and keep up, and it's awesome. Don, Buccaneers 23, Lions 20. I do have the Buccaneers winning this thing, but I do obviously think it's going to be close. The Lions have earned a lot of respect. I think the Buccaneers have earned a lot of respect as well. And honestly, somebody in the live chat said earlier, this thing should have been flexed to Sunday Night Football. I mean, Eagles Jets on Sunday night. We're not waiting all day for that. Like, come on. Let's flip. I mean, it's not going to happen now, but Lions Bucs Sunday night would be such a better matchup than Eagles Jets.
It would be, but the selfish side of me having to get up at 3:30 in the morning Monday to go to work, I'm glad it didn't get flexed into Sunday night. 4:25 start is already going to keep me up late enough. But yeah, I do want to shout out Don in the chat, the Lions fan. He is bringing it. I'm loving the competition. I'm really loving the fact that he's keeping it respectful. He's defending his team. He's standing up for his guys, but he's being respectful. I appreciate it, Don. Love the competition. For those of you that heard the crossover episode that I did with Matt Derry of Locked On Lines, you know what my score prediction is. For those of you that didn't, I recommend you go back, you listen. A lot of great insight from Matt on the Lions, some things that you guys probably don't know about that team. But I predict a 24-23 Buccaneers victory. I do think this is a very, very tough, physical, tight game. And it's not always going to be pretty. And if there's one thing that we've talked about on this show, whether it's you and me, David, or when Evan Klosky is on, the Buccaneers are really good at winning these ugly, nasty, gross football games this year. And I think that's exactly what it's going to be. To me, this is going to come down to the last possession. And in this case, David, you laid it out the other day. The Buccaneers have had the ball last in most of these games. And in fact, the Buccaneers have been the last team to score in 5 consecutive games. So if the Buccaneers have the ball last, they can get into Chase McLaughlin range. Boom. The Bucs are going to win this one just barely. But again, shout out to the line. I love Dan Campbell. I love Amon-Ra. Really like Sam Laporta and Brian Branch and my guy Kirby Joseph. So lots to like for the Lions. This is going to be a fun game. Don't be surprised if the Lions win, but then again, Lions fans, don't be surprised if the Bucs win this one also.
Yeah.
All right.
Lions fans are telling me that Jared Goff threw 2 interceptions against Seattle. Pro Football Reference and Pro Football Focus have 1 interception against Seattle, guys. I don't know what to tell you. I will take your word for it because you've obviously watched more Lions football than I have, but the data sites that we rely on have told us that he only threw 1 interception against both those games. Either way, thanks for coming through tonight. Have a great weekend, Bucs fans, Lions fans, together.
Yeah, all right. That is going to do it. Of course, you can join me on YouTube live after the game. I don't have a start time. We'll tentatively say like 8:15, somewhere around there. Sometime between 8 and 8:30 is when we're going to go live on YouTube to react to this game, talk about everything that happened, talk about King Goffrey and the Baker man and how this game shook out. In the meantime, check out everything that David is doing over at BucsGameDay.com. Check out my work over at BucsNation.com. And of course, follow everything on Twitter at Locked On Bucs, at JYarcho_Bucs, and at DHarrison82. Hope you all have an absolutely outstanding weekend. Stay safe, stay healthy, fire the cannons. Thank you so much for joining us right here on Locked On Bucs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.